Folks at home, welcome, one and all to RueTV Tonight. Tonight, I am so super excited about our guest tonight. I've been an admirer of this guy's work for a long time, and we'll get into how long. I might expose my age to you guys and girls tonight, but I did write an intro, so let me just it might be. Yeah. It's not in this order, but I'm just going to say, ladies and gentlemen, my guest tonight, actor, improviser, teacher, father, comedic icon, and friend, the one and only Bill Chott on the show tonight. Bill, how you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
How's life in LA going? We're coast to coast here tonight, guys and girls. We are New Jersey to California. I believe you're in LA right now still, right?
Yes, I certainly am. Yeah. The weather here is amazing. We had kind of like a crappy start to the year. There was a lot of rain.
Yeah.
But then again, California's been in such a state of drought for the past decade or so or longer, most of my life.
Right.
We just had so much rain here that it's actually really, really nice. We haven't had a fire season this year.
Right.
All the fires have been up in Canada.
Well, I was looking. Yeah, I was looking on the just for shits and giggles, and I'm like 73 right now, and I can walk outside right now in New Jersey. You can't even breathe. The humidity is so awful. It's feels like 95, 96 outside. I think it's 76 in LA.
I've been taking my morning walks and putting on sweatpants. That's what the weather in LA is like. So.
That's unheard of for July, really.
Yes. Yeah, we're having an amazing summer here.
Yeah, I got to get out there. That seems like the place to be. It
does for now.
The
traffic's not that bad because most of the town's on strike. The writers are on strike, so that shut down a lot of production. So it's the best of all worlds, except for those of us who are out of work.
So we are in month 3, if my calculations are correct, of this WGA strike. Did you? I mean, you are more in the know than I am, obviously. Are you hearing any updates on this or any?
I am not hearing any updates about the writers' negotiations. I'm not in the writers' union, so they may be sharing information with. I joined the Writers Guild. I was in WGAE with my first job, the Dana Carvey Show. I was a writer and performer on that show.
Yeah,
and I used to get the WGAE. Newsletters
they send you,
stuff like that.
Right.
But I haven't in years for the WGA West, and but we do get updates of where the strike actions are.
Yeah.
So if you're in SAG, you can go out and strike in solidarity with them, and hold a sign and share a cup of coffee and get to know some folks that
it really
you care about.
It's really, and I know a lot of casual viewers they should care, but they doesn't strike their interest. But writers are so very important. They should be taken care of. And I had I'm still friends with them. I had a friend named Ed Ferrara, who actually ironically used to teach years ago at Second City at Chicago.
Oh, cool.
For a short period. Now he lives in Florida now. He's teaching. He would tell me what a thankless, rewarding, of course, because you're creating, art, but what a thankless job it is, because it's just people just don't respect. Not everyone, but the majority. I just really hope this gets resolved and there's a end in sight soon, because this is ridiculous. I think shoots are being halted, and a lot of people are out of work, and that's the worst thing. So
and it's going to get even deeper if the studios don't make a deal with the actors union. Like our next round of negotiations, needs to be solved by, I think, July 12th. Yeah. So if things aren't solved on that, then the SAG-AFTRA is going to be on strike as well.
I had to double check with my brother, because he didn't even know, but I believe the SNL season got got axed the last two episodes, maybe at least got axed because of it.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah. There's no way you could do that show without writers.
No, you're out of luck there. We'll get into a little bit of that. I do want to touch on writing and sketch and everything. But speaking of sketch, you as many people know, as you've covered before, just an awesome improviser. Not only an improviser, as a performer, but as a teacher too. Can you give me your little bit of your background in improv and really what it means to you? Because I have my opinion. I want to share after, of course, I give you the floor. But tell us your background in improv and your roots in improv, please.
Well, I started studying improv in Chicago, but I started doing improv as an exercise when I was doing theater in Missouri.
Yeah.
And so I'd had some introduction to improvisation, and then some friends of mine who had studied in Chicago came back and started a troupe in St. Louis called The Network.
Okay.
And we performed at Catch a Rising Star Comedy Club, and we were sketch and improv, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And I later learned that some of the improv that we did was kind of more like Mad Libs. We were just like plugging in suggestions to what we were doing, but it involved a certain amount of skill and talent.
Right.
But I later went on to learn really more about what it took to do improv, which is really to listen, to react, and to be open to what the team is, to the direction the team is moving in, not the direction that the joke is necessarily moving into that you see being written in your head. So I studied at Second City in Chicago, and while I was studying in Second City, I auditioned for Comedy Sports, and I started doing Comedy Sports, which is a competitive. It's not really competitive, but it looks like it's a competition going on because the host is a referee, and there's a red team and a blue team, and there's been a lot of people that people might know who have gone on from Comedy Sports to really big things, and Jason Sudeikis, has been talking a lot about it more lately. For people that know Ted Lasso,
absolutely,
I've been hearing him drop in a little bit about Comedy Sports here and there. So that was my first professional performance as an improviser, was Comedy Sports, and then I got hired at Second City. Right. And when I was hired at Second City, I wound up getting invited to play a lot at Improv Olympic, which was a place where almost all of my friends had studied.
Yeah.
And I never really studied there. I took a class with Sharna later, and I took a class with Del Close, but I never went through their whole program. But that's another place where I studied and learned and came up. And then when I got hired to do the Dana Carvey Show in New York with my very first improv teacher, Stephen Colbert.
Yeah. That amazing.
That was good to have that improv background in there. And the show got canceled pretty quickly, but it dropped me smack dab in New York right as the Upright Citizens Brigade was starting up. So I got to do a lot of their early improv sets. I was playing in a lot of their shows. I even sat in for Matt Walsh one time when an emergency came up and he needed me to step in the show. So
yeah, absolutely. That's what I wanted to get at was, and I know you do a lot of I don't know about recently, but I know you've done some corporate kind of thing, corporate deals with your company, the Improv Trick, right? Yeah,
Improv Trick mostly does corporate events now. We're not offering an ongoing weekly class at this time.
Yeah,
but we do corporate events, or if an organization, and of course I'm also folding that into something I'm doing now called Camp We Can Too. Yeah. And that's going to be an annual camp that's going to provide improv training as well as dance and social skills and everything for kids of all different abilities.
I brought this up before on the show, but improv is such more so, I get that, you get into improv because you want to maybe get into sketch comedy or you want to form a troupe, but it really it's a good life skill to have, really. And in terms of just thinking on your feet and how to react in a conversation with somebody. I'm not saying you should be doing a bit with someone when you're having a serious conversation, but through my experience, I feel like it's an important life skill to have. I don't know, just a good way to communicate, a good way to be able to, especially if you're somebody who has, maybe anxiety interacting with people. It can get you over that hump and kind of give you that break that barrier of what's going on. But improv is such an important skill to have, and I guess that's what happens when you do these corporate gigs. 90% of the people there probably have no intentions of getting looked at by Lorne Michaels or something one day.
Yeah, I think some of the people that have benefited the most from improv are people who are not at all trying to have a career in comedy.
Right.
There's been ministers that have taken my class.
Wow.
And it wasn't because they wanted to get better speaking in the pulpit.
Yeah.
They wanted to get better listening so they could listen to their congregation.
Yeah,
so the life skills, the communication skills that are taught through improv, it's accessible to everybody, and everybody can benefit from it.
Now, when you broke in, you had no desire to switch 180 and ever do stand-up, or were you 100% dedicated to improv? Did you ever get that bug to do stand-up?
I did. When I first started doing improv, it was at a stand-up club, and it was one of the premier comedy clubs. Catch a Rising Star.
Right.
And so I started, the very first stand-up set I ever did was at Catch a Rising Star, and later on I did a few sets at the Funny Bone in St. Louis. But I really wanted to do improv. Stand-up was not my calling. It takes a real special personality to do stand-up, and that's not. I feel more comfortable being a character than I do being myself. And you really have to be incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah,
and then have put a microscope on your life and put it in front of the world to create a real stand-up act, not just jokes, but here's my personality and here's who I am.
Yeah.
But I can boast that I did one really big stand-up gig once.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It was an arena show opening for the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, wow.
In St. Louis, Missouri at the Family Arena.
Yeah.
Because a friend of mine was booking the venue, and there weren't a lot of local comics who could work clean.
Okay, yeah.
And the Smothers Brothers said, yeah, you can be controversial, but you got to work clean. And all the time people were like, well, guess what? Louis C.K. doesn't have to work clean. I'm like, yeah, well, he also can't keep himself in his pants. So many people think that they want to be the next Richard Pryor or George Carlin, and that's great. Those are two of my ultimate heroes. But even those guys knew how to work clean. They were able to work the Tonight Show.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to be able to, in case you're opening for an act that requires that, or in case you get a television show that's network television or something like that.
Where was the Smothers Brothers gig at?
It was in St. Charles, right outside of St. Louis.
St. Louis, okay.
Yeah, at the Family Arena, which is this giant arena that's usually, rock concerts and wrestling matches.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I think maybe a few truck and tractor pulls.
Well, it was at the time. It was probably just you and the God rest his soul. I miss him, but you and Louis Anderson. So I think you beat out Louis for that one. Yes. Louis was absolutely genius working clean, unbelievable.
Oh yeah, but he wasn't local to St. Louis, and they were trying.
He was Minnesota.
They have a big budget to fly in some acts. So
right.
I at the time had moved back to St. Louis. I had bought a house there, so I was there a good portion of the year. So it was an easy job for my friend Tom. And I'm always entirely grateful for that, because it was an honor. It was one of the biggest honors of my life to open for the Smothers Brothers, one of my big idols in comedy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you just mentioned St. Louis. From St. Louis to this place right here. I like holding objects up on the show.
Yes, you should.
This place right here. This place right here.
Chicago.
Yep. Sweet home Chicago. I need to get to Chicago one day. I've never even visited. But anyway, it was Chicago where you got the call for the Dana Carvey Show. And interesting fact, I think our folks at home would like to know, you were about to, right, Melanie? My dog's making noise. You were about to go on tour, I think, with an improv group with some kind of interesting names in that group, I believe, right? Before you got the call or something. Or correct me if I'm wrong, I think.
Yeah, I was touring with Second City's National Touring Company. I was in a company with Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, At one point, Rachel Dratch was in our company.
Right.
So we all considered that our main stage, because a lot of us didn't go on to main stage. Like Amy Poehler wound up moving to New York and starting UCB.
Yeah.
So for many of us who were like, who knew we were destined for great things, we were figured if we get plucked up before that,
Yeah.
we're going to consider this our main stage. So, and I was touring when I got the call for the first audition.
Yeah, and as a lifelong, as I am, as a lifelong SNL watcher, I'm sure when Robert Smigel or Dana Carvey calls, you're like, okay, yep, doing it,
I'm there.
it. Not a question. Yeah, that was really crazy, the crazy sequence of events there. And did you feel any? Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit, because there is one thing I want to talk about, and I watched it years ago, but I had to rewatch it since I'm talking to you tonight. But the Too Funny to Fail doc on Hulu. Anybody at home who hasn't, I've been telling my friggin' cousin and brother to watch it. Watch the damn show, okay? Watch it. It's a great documentary, and Bill's in it. Just watch it. Anyway, there's a segment of the documentary where Bill talks about his SNL audition that he had with Lorne Michaels and a specific Jackie Gleason. I'm not going to do the talking. Tell us a little bit about the Jackie Gleason impression that you did for Lorne Michaels, please.
Well, I did this audition where it was Jackie Gleason taking a difficult shit.
So in other words, Jackie Gleason, a little slightly constipated.
Yeah, very constipated. And it all started because my buddy Ali Faranakian, who was also in that touring company,
right?
He was great at setting people up. Not only is he a very gifted performer, he's also a great writer and producer. So I remember him throwing his elbows over the back of the seat and saying, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, Jackie Gleason taking a difficult shit." And I just did it. I was like, I did this whole thing.
Yeah.
And when I did it for SNL, that was what turned off Lorne Michaels, because I had started off doing my Rush Limbaugh impression.
Well,
good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the only true form of public broadcasting left in America. I was getting laughs, and I was told don't expect laughs, and I was getting laughs. Immediately when I went to Jackie Gleason taking a difficult shit, shut down.
That's interesting, because you'd think Lorne would be, unless his maybe his business mind kind of took over and was like, this is a little bit too weird for our brand. I don't know. I thought it was hilarious. But
I heard that it specifically because it was poop humor.
Oh, okay.
Because he had already done an entire sketch that was all about ding dong jokes.
Yeah.
The guys were basically naked and they were like in a shower or something like that. And there was a board covering their So he had no problem with going blue, and the show has always pushed boundaries. Yeah. But I think where it can, because look back at it, there's not many moments where they've really gone to poop humor.
No, not too often.
Except for there was once an adult diaper commercial for "Oops, I Crapped My Pants."
Sure, remember that.
It was more making fun of incontinence than it was poop itself.
When you were on stage, was there any semblance of anxiety, or did you feel that at all, or would you? I know you love a live crowd, but when the king of Lorne Michaels is sitting in the crowd, did you feel? Oh
yeah, I was shaking in my boots.
Yeah, once you got going, you kind of got into it, though, I guess.
I remember being so nervous I almost threw up before going in there. And then when I was done with it, I was crying because, and whether I had done well or not, I probably would be crying just out of the release. It's over. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I had approached Lorne because he was coming through to look at the main stage and ETC companies in Chicago. And that's not where they found me. They found me through just an audition that I sent in, and my friend Todd Stashwick, who played the captain on Picard this last season. Todd, people that know him know what a great dramatic actor he is as well. But he's also a brilliantly gifted improviser and and a comedic actor.
Yeah.
And so SNL was really courting him at that one point, and he said, you really should check out Bill Chott. He's not on one of the stages right now. I was hosting, and so I was basically seating Lorne Michaels and his party, and I was like, oh, by the way, Mr. Michaels, I'm going to be in New York next week. Apparently you're taking a look at me. And he didn't know. He was looking, he was like, oh, really? So,
These people didn't give him the memo, I guess. But
yeah.
So from there we go to the the phone call. I believe it was from the one and only Robert Smigel, right? Smigel gave you a call, or was it Dana himself? I don't know.
No, when I got the call, usually you don't get the call from
you auditioned for Dana. I
auditioned for them in person.
Yeah.
Hung out for a while, and they even took us out to dinner, which was a really fun thing.
Oh wow!
But when I got the call, it was my agent. Usually you get the call because they made the final deal, and before you even go in for the audition, you have to sign away your life. You sign a contract that says, "Yep, these are the characters that I do. I own personal rights to this. Anything else that I create on this show is going to belong to you. I promise to be on this show for up to 5 years.
Yeah.
I promise not to appear on another network unless it gets cleared by this contract." All kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
And then you get a call from your manager and agent saying, "Hey, you got it." And at that point, I didn't even have a manager yet. So it's basically my agent, who was Mike August at William Morris,
right,
calling to tell me that I got it.
It's amazing. And I this is what I wanted to get off my chest at the top of the show. 1996. Okay, I'm dating myself, but I was 15 years old at the time. And I was a Dana fan prior to. I don't know what year it was I started watching Dana. I want to say a few years before that. But that show, and I think I can really speak for a lot of people, really resonated. And as much flack as it got from critics who really shouldn't have been so objective with something that is subjective, it really was, and to coin a phrase, it was anarchist punk rock comedy. I realized it was on prime time, which who's going to turn down prime time ABC? Nobody's going to. If you're going to be presented with that, we're going to take it. And you were really part of something that is going to be remembered for a long, long time. And for me, I can only speak for myself. I was freshman in high school watching the show, and I was like, holy shit, this is me. If you guys at home, girls at home, watch the documentary, listen to what Bill Hader says about it. He was in high school also at the time. He's a couple of years older than me, but same reaction. I'm like, holy shit, I found my comedy. Not that I didn't like SNL. I dug SNL. I was a big fan of SNL, the Glory Days, Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, loved Farley, of course. But when I saw this show, it was like, okay, this is a VCR alert. I'm taping this. I don't know how long this is gonna last. But if it dies tomorrow, I'm gonna watch the tapes till I'm, today. And everybody knows what happens. Give me your undivided. Just give me your thoughts on this experience, the Dana Carvey Show. I don't have to go over the obvious. The people you worked with, Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Louis C.K. was a co-writer. I also want to get into one of the writers I don't know too much about, but that's Dino in a little bit. But just give me your instant reactions when somebody says your time on the Dana Carvey Show, Bill. Just talk about it a little bit for us.
It really was kind of magical. And I wish I would have appreciated for everything that it was at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was upset because I wasn't in more sketches.
Yeah.
The things that I wrote weren't appropriate necessarily for the show. And not because they weren't too dirty or anything like that, but they were a little bit too bookish. Or some of the stuff maybe wasn't really appropriate. There was some sketches that I did, I did this movie years later called The Ringer with Johnny Knoxville. And the character that I did in that, Thomas, I had a character very similar to that, Frederick.
Right.
And, just the way some people run hot and cold on that movie, whether they think it's offensive or not.
Yeah.
I did sketches with that character where I don't think it was offensive because he was always high status, making fun of everybody else's assumptions around him.
Right.
But I think that I don't think primetime ABC was ready for it, and now doesn't even seem like a time for that ever to happen. I don't think anybody wants to see somebody who's not disabled play a character who's disabled. So there was one brief shining moment where it could have been, because I later did the character on a pilot for a show called Sketchpad on HBO. So there were some things that I did that were maybe too edgy for primetime TV, and some things that were just maybe too high-minded for primetime TV. Like, people who are turning in to see weren't turning in to see it's St. Thomas Aquinas, world famous theologian. There was a reason why a lot of my stuff wasn't getting on, but I felt kind of bitter about it. And I missed one show because I decided to stay in town and do a show that it turned out I wasn't even in that week. And that was my grandfather passed away. So I could have been back at my grandfather's funeral.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I got to be here for the show, because what if I don't get on this week? And I was in 2 sketches. Neither of them got put in the final cut of the show that week. So at the time, I felt some bitterness about it. I still realized how lucky I was to be performing with one of my comedy idols, Dana Carvey, and then, people that I had, grown as an improviser watching perform. And like I said, Stephen Colbert was my first improv teacher, and both he and Carell were performing on the main stage at that time.
Yeah.
And, me and, one of my best friends, Rich Tallarico, who later went on to write for Tonight Show, SNL, Mad TV, Key and Peele. Rich is amazing. Rich and I went up to the training center together at the same time. So we would go and watch the Second City reviews and watch Colbert and Carell and all the amazing people that were in every show that they did.
Yeah.
So I knew I was blessed to be working with the people I was working with. And you mentioned Dino Stamatopoulos. Dino wrote the sketch that I probably one of my favorite sketches of all time, the audition sketch from Mr. Show.
Oh yeah, love Mr. Show. Absolutely.
Can I use this chair? Damn it! That sketch. It's genius.
Yeah.
And he was inspired by, he has said several times that he's inspired by, and specifically that sketch, inspired by Abbott and Costello, which was a old black and white comedy duo that I was inspired by when I was young.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there were all the, and I already knew Dino, and he was one of those guys that, like, unless you were a comedy nerd, you may not have known who he was at the time. Like some people didn't know who Smigel was. They might have recognized him from The Bears, but they didn't know what he had written or what he had done on the show. And Dino is very much the same way, one of those people who's behind the scenes, writing some of the most subversive and hilarious comedy. And John Glazer, Mike Stoyanov, who I shared an office with. There was just so many amazing people, and I loved meeting Heather Morgan and working with Heather Morgan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unfortunately, she and I never really did a sketch together. We wrote together, and the stuff that we wrote didn't get on. We wrote sketches that didn't even involve language. They involved us grunting and making noises or saying things that were unintelligible.
Man, but, well, 22 minutes with commercials is not enough. I think if it were an hour show, you'd see a lot more of that.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And
what they're looking for is fillet of sketch. What's going to be the funniest thing that hits the hardest, that also hits the broadest audience?
Right, yeah.
Obviously not as broad as Home Improvement, but they still wanted to be relevant to the audience that's watching it on ABC.
Yeah, that was a lead in. But so the format of, like, when you guys, like you and Heather, would pitch something, it was kind of, Dana kept the kind of format of where we've got writers, but the cast can also pitch stuff.
Yeah,
too.
we were all of us were hired as writer performers.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, everybody was. I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah. At least I know that Heather, myself, Colbert, and Carell were. Elon Gold was hilarious. He kind of got brought in a few episodes in because he's a brilliant impressionist. And I'm not sure if he was hired as a writer, but I know he must have been writing some of the stuff that he was saying, because it was very uniquely him, and it was impressions that he did. So
You did a politician one time, and I can't quite remember it, but my brother and I quote it to this day, and it's one line, and was it Billy Graham or somebody? I can't remember
Bill
who it was.
Graham. Yeah.
You said
Bill Graham.
you didn't you didn't you lost the family vote 3 votes to 2 or something.
Yeah.
Just hilarious. And then of course the Nixon sketch of with you playing was it with George Washington or something in bed with
Oh yeah, I played
was that Nixon's
Ben Franklin.
Not Washington.
In bed with Hancock. I'm like, Hancock, it's after 4. Yes.
Oh, just there's a lot of great memories. And it was, I don't know, a lot of people know I have a bit of a warped sense of humor. That show at age 15 probably shaped a lot of my brain.
Warped it.
Yeah, warped it for the good or the bad, however you want to look at it. But long story short, if you guys get a chance to watch that documentary, it really explains a lot of what we're talking about. And it's on Hulu now, and Bill is in it, so check that out. But Bill, you brought up actually, you know what? Before we move on to that, I want to move on to one thing I picked up on. I didn't know that Gentle News. You were in this sketch. I didn't know that Gentle News Network, GNT or Gentle News Network, Gentle News Television.
Yeah, Gentle News Network
was kind of like a smartly written, kind of like tongue in cheek to the network suits that were kind of coming down on the raunchy stuff that was in Dana Carvey Show. At the same time, broadcasting, killings and rapes on the news and everything at the same time. So that was right. I think that was a very geniusly. Do you remember who wrote that sketch? That was genius.
I don't recall, man. There were so many things coming out. It was coming out so fast. It was like before you knew it, whoop, the show happened, and now it's no longer. Yeah. That particular one, I don't remember who wrote that. Yeah. But yeah, it did make a pretty strong statement. It was still very comedic. I've got a feeling it seems very Smigel-esque.
Yeah, it may have been.
So I'm sure it was probably Smigel and Dana writing that one. Sure. But interesting thing that happened, there was the how Dana's has the horse munching out of his hand at one point when he's reading one of the news stories. Yeah. That horse was like shitting right there on the set. It's like, if you've ever been around a horse or a cow when they're shitting, it just comes out.
It's a constant flow.
Anybody thought of that when they put that horse there, so there wasn't a pad down or anything to absorb that. So they had to stop, clean that up. So but one of our cleanest sketches was just covered in shit.
Yeah, but I do just wanted to give you props because you're a big part of that show, and I loved it so much. And it is until recently, with the advent of internet streaming and then the documentary coming out, that I'm seeing that other people loved it too, and it was considered, to be a cult classic. You wouldn't know when it came out because, as I'm watching it, I got my grandpa saying, "I can't believe they made the president milk like gave him nipples, Ryan. Did you see the nipples they gave him? I couldn't believe it." And my grandpa was a conservative, Republican, and he's getting offended that Bill Clinton being ripped. I don't know.
Yeah, that was the thing. Half of the people were offended because of that. Half of the people were offended that Clinton was on their screen.
Yeah.
What do I have to see is?
I don't know. That made me love it more. But anyway, Bill, you did make mention of one of the major movies you were in, The Ringer. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy that you talk fondly of this movie because, in today's day and age, you probably wouldn't see a person like yourself playing the character like you did. They'd probably cast, for example, if anybody at home seen Peanut Butter Falcon, they cast a special needs person as in that role. Tell us a little bit about your experience with The Ringer. You work with Barry Blaustein, who was, I'm a big wrestling fan. He did Beyond the Mat, a lot of other movies. I think he did Nutty Professor too. Farrelly Brothers, and of course, Johnny Knoxville. Tell us of some memories of The Ringer. Bill, go ahead.
It was an amazing experience because we shot it in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. And which Austin's a great town anyway. There's, rock country, whatever
Yeah.
sort of music you love, you could find it. You go from one bar to the next, live music, great food, barbecue. So just like even off the set, even when we weren't working, it was a blast. When we were working, we had a chance to be exposed to the culture and the
Yeah.
community of Special Olympics,
Right.
which was one of our first things. Like before we even started filming and before we were even down there to film, they put us up for, I think it was 2 weeks or maybe it was just 1 week, but it felt like a whole boot camp
Yeah.
because they took all of us who were going to be competing in the events on screen through Special Olympics training. So
Oh,
we
wow, I
got
didn't know that.
every morning, early in the morning, we stretched, we ran, we did shot put, we did high jump. And I was not a jock. I never did any of these things. Some of the guys I think had some, like I'm sure Knoxville had some, some athletic experience. And if not, he got it through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think Jed Reese had done some athletics, and Eddie Barbanel was an actual Special Olympian. John Taylor had done some Special Olympics events when he was younger, but he wasn't necessarily in training either. So a lot of us really, really had to get in shape in a short amount of time because they didn't, they didn't want and we didn't want to portray Special Olympics in a negative light.
Yeah.
You don't want to make fun of the aspect of, because people seem to think that like, Special Olympics, everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a ribbon. That's not true. You earn your spot in Special Olympics. Those are some of the bravest people I know.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so my first experience to it was that. And then they had people who were all over from Special Olympics come in. So people from other states and other countries, from Japan. And we went on a river cruise down the river in
Nice.
Austin with,
Nice.
all kinds of international people from Special Olympics. And, what's another event? Oh yeah, we all went bowling. There was a big bowling night and a dinner. We all went out to dinner and, that formed some of the experiences that I had. And that's why I went on to later do volunteer work with Special Olympics in St. Louis, my hometown. I worked as a speech coach for the global messengers of Special Olympics. And so I taught them improv and worked on speeches with them. And that led to the work that I'm doing with Camp We Can Too.
Yeah.
So
it's great work. And it's good that you clarified all that, because on the surface, there could be some people today, probably younger people, who don't understand that it wasn't in that character, and the movie in general was not in bad taste at all. I mean, the intent anyway.
It might have been in bad taste. It was the only way to get it done at the time. I think not enough people in the industry had faith in people with disabilities, and they didn't think that a cast made completely of people with disabilities could pull off that sort of a movie. So they brought in us as quote unquote ringers, to get it done, on time and on budget. And I think it could easily be done, and it's been shown to be done. The new movie with Woody Harrelson, also a Farrelly Brothers movie.
Yeah,
it can be done, and it will be done. It just won't be done that same way. There won't be a need to have someone without a disability. Just like there's no longer a reason to have a person who's not Native American play a Native American.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I think the world's changing for the good, and representation matters.
I do too, and I honestly want to make the statement of anybody who thinks that it's a bad thing, that things are getting more progressive. It really isn't. And if you need to rely on offensive stuff like that, I don't know. I just always write smarter stuff, and the way I do it is get weirder, write weirder, more option. Get more creative, get smarter, get weirder. That's how you do it. I mean,
there's always a reason to punch up instead of punch down.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I don't care whether people are punching at Trump or Biden, but punch up. Don't punch down people with disabilities, people in marginalized communities. There's never a reason to do that.
The only thing that I'm kind of, I don't know, saddened about, kind of like turned off about, is one thing that has happened through this is you see a lot less. I mean, the example would be The Ringer. You see a lot less mainstream comedies in theaters these days. I mean, like there was the, you had the heyday of the app, I mean, it was like 10, 15 years ago with the Apatow comedies, and you don't see much in theaters. You see some streaming, of course, but or you can find them, on demand or whatever. That is streaming. But not too many studios take chances on comedies anymore. And I hope that changes, because I grew up with, going to see Chris Farley movies and Adam Sandler and of course movies like The Ringer and theaters. And
yeah, I think what they overlook when it comes to that is they overlook that people really do want to come together and laugh together.
Yeah.
They want to sit in an audience and, sometimes laugh at the way somebody's laughing,
Yeah.
Or go, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who thought something like that was funny.
Yeah.
And they're making a realistic judgment in that, yeah, these things don't need to be seen in a big screen. Movies like Asteroid City need to be seen on a big screen, or movies like the biggest, the Indiana Jones movie need to be seen on a big screen.
Yeah.
Most comedies don't need to be seen on a big screen, but they do need to be seen by an audience.
Yeah.
They do need to be shared by an audience. And I think more comedies should get some sort of release.
Yeah.
So that we can get the release of laughter.
Absolutely. And I think more studios should take a chance on that, and not just remakes. I just take original ideas, and the writers out there watching, hopefully write some original stuff and try to get it made. I really do miss it. I really do miss the summer blockbuster comedy, because now it's all action hero movies, and I'm a horror fan, horror movies, but let's get the comedy movies back in the theaters, please. That's right. But anyway, I'd be remiss, Bill, if I didn't bring this up, and I'm also going to be honest, because it was a little bit after my I wasn't watching the Disney Channel at the time, but you're known a lot. You get recognized a lot for Wizards of Waverly Place, and that gig that you had on there, a sweet gig for about 5 years, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sweet deal you had there. And do you have any fond memories of working on that show, or was it the opposite? What is your take on the
murder? No, it was
Selena Gomez.
Lighthearted fun. I think, like, I listened to the podcast and I've been a guest on the podcast that David DeLuise and Jennifer Stone do.
Yeah,
the Wizards of Waverly podcast, and they talk about this so often, and I knew it at the time.
Yeah.
But I really didn't know how rare it was, how much the set felt like you were part of the family. And it really is the way the Carvey Show felt too. We were still in a highly charged environment, and more of a high pressure environment when doing the Carvey Show, but nobody ever felt, edged out or marginalized or anything like that.
Good.
On that set, and nobody, and obviously nobody felt that way on The Ringer. So my 3 biggest projects are ones that I felt so blessed, especially in retrospect, to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something. So if anybody from Disney is watching, we're waiting on the reboot of that. So if you want to reignite that series, I mean, I guess logic says it would stream on Disney Plus. You're right, the movie. I think, what I think the holdup is, and I don't know her at all, but I'm assuming there's going to be a big paycheck to Selena Gomez. She's a big star now, right? So they probably
However, she has expressed a desire to want to do it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Every member of the cast has said both on the podcast or in other places that they really want this to happen. And I don't think that Selena or her representatives would make it too big of a hurdle.
Yeah.
For the price point for that, but who knows? There may be certain things that there are certain things where you can't come down on a price, because then the next time you go to a negotiation, people can say, "Well, she did it for this,"
Yeah.
So So it could be that to some small extent, but I know
Yeah,
it's not because Selena's holding out, and
that's good.
I would assume that her representatives aren't that jaded that they would know that she
Yeah,
wants to do it. So
yeah,
it's also been that um, you got to have the right script.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just can't be thrown together. You got to have
Yeah,
something that's going to be entertaining and worth it. So worth it to
yeah,
produce, in other words. So,
yeah.
but Bill, before we get out of here, we're wrapping up really soon. I found it really interesting that you actually had a gig in a dramatic scene in a world renowned, pretty much very famous show called This Is Us. You play.
Yeah.
If anybody at home wants to Google this, you can press pause in the video, go to Google, type in the mailman from This Is Us. Click it, see what comes up. It's Bill's face. So tell us a little bit about that gig and more specifically, Second City background. Dana Carvey Show, Wizards of Waverly Place. This is a dramatic, sad, sappy deal you had to do. Tell us a little bit about that gig.
Well, it's probably one of my very few dramatic roles that
Yeah.
have been on TV, because I was even on an episode of ER, but even that was comic relief. I was this guy who
Okay.
thought everybody wanted to see him naked because he had to get undressed.
Didn't see that.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, most of the straight out dramatic work that I had done was still comedic in some way.
Yeah.
But I've always done drama. I started off doing plays in high school and college, so I'd had a lot of experience with it. But I had done a lot of auditions, so I had a chance to perform and to play dramatic roles. I just didn't get cast in many,
Right.
and that often happens because you're going up in front of people, and your most recent project was a comedy, and I hadn't done. It had been a few years since I had done Wizards. And then so they saw me for This Is Us, and it's been a lot of drama since then too, because I did that. I did Marshall's Miracle. I did Mid-Century, and some of these I didn't have that large of a role, but it was definitely a dramatic role.
Yeah.
And This Is Us is probably the most hardest hitting. And people who have watched the clip, who have said, I don't even know that show, and I didn't know what that scene was about. But when you started crying, I started crying. I was like, "Good, I did my job." It was, it was a blessing. It came along at a great time.
Yeah.
When I needed a career change, I needed to start going in a different direction. And I would really like to do more dramatic work. I'm hoping after this strike is over that I have a chance to do more dramatic work to explore in that area. I still love comedy. I'm still gonna want to do comedic work, but yeah, I sure would love to do more stuff like This Is Us.
Hope so too. It's I don't know that a lot of people understand this, but and I don't want to speak for everybody, but do you agree with the statement that a lot of comedy, comes from, I don't want to say a dark place, but a lot of times it comes from pain, and it can be very easy for someone. I mean, a lot of comedians have done serious roles like that. You can just kind of more do a 180 from comedic to serious, and I don't know, maybe you pull from something inside you that's I can't speak for you.
I think it can come from a place of pain.
Yeah.
I can say I'm pretty fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
In that I grew up in kind of a very Leave It to Beaver, wholesome
Mm-hmm.
family. My dad may have yelled at us from time to time, but I think everybody's dad's like, "Hey, what's going on in here?"
Of course.
That sort of yelling at, But there was certainly nothing traumatic.
Yeah.
My mother was an incredibly loving stay-at-home mom for most of our childhood.
Yeah.
We had some tough times here and there where she, worked a job, but it wasn't like we were latchkey kids without a mom.
Right.
So I don't feel I had a lot of pain. Maybe there was some pain associated with being, the new kid, because we moved quite frequently. So I think out of the pain of loneliness,
Yeah,
which is, on the pain scale, pretty low.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But, loneliness, not having other kids to play with other than my brother and sister many times.
Yeah.
Developing the comedy skills to interact with other people and make them laugh and be entertaining and, have people want to be around me. So in that sense, maybe it came from that remote sense of pain, but I've been fortunate for that. But I know a lot of people who work in comedy who have had it really tough and have gone through some really harrowing experiences or came from a really tough neighborhood or tough family.
Yeah.
And at least they were able to find that as a way out.
Yeah. Good for them. It is tough. And it's comedy has been for a lot of people, myself included, because I do stuff on the side. It's an outlet that not only can be a creative outlet, but honestly therapy, because I know how you feel in front of a live crowd. And it's not just whether it be 50,000 or 5 people. If you can get those 5 people to react and be entertained, it's I don't do drugs, but I can imagine it's probably like getting you know what I'm saying, Bill, I think.
Yeah.
So it's very important to people's mental health. And I encourage anybody to get into comedy. If you're funny, if you're not funny, then get the hell out of here. Anyway, Bill, thanks so much for being on the show tonight. Before we get out of here, of course, we already talked about the improv trick and that stuff, but we got some plugs to do. We got plugs. It's 2023. We end the interview with plugs. Anything you want to plug?
Yes. So Camp We Can Too. And the website is wecantu.org. WEKANTU.org. And it's an amazing thing. We're going to be offering it, hopefully, knock on wood, if we can get enough donations, if we can get enough volunteers together. By the summer of 2024, the first annual camp for kids of all abilities to explore improvisation, dance, to have classes in social skills and emotional skills. And hopefully it's going to be a really fun experience and opportunity for growth for a lot of people.
Nice.
And hopefully it brings some much needed joy to the world and allows people who have a lot of joy to share to be able to share that joy.
Absolutely. Well, I'll put that on the links to that in the description, so you guys can check that out. How about social media? Where do they find you on the social media apps?
They can find me at Bill Chott, BILLCHOTT. And that's where you'll find me on Instagram, on Twitter, although I don't post that much on Twitter, and mostly on TikTok. And if anybody ever has a corporate event or something like that, and they would love to bring some improv to that event, or just want to have me come and perform, info@theimprovtrick.com or just theimprovtrick.com.
Oh, that's going to be in the description. Thank you so much again, Bill, for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Dana Carvey Show forever. Better believe it. All right, Bill. Cheers. Love you.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. It's a fun time.